Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Navigating Gender Expression Abroad, hosted by the System-Wide Office for UCEAP. Oh, too far. My name is Lauren Nestler, and I am an Associate Program Director. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I will have my colleagues who are going to present introduce themselves now.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Pollard. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am the Director of International Health Safety and Crisis Management here at UCEAP.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Vandersall. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am an academic specialist at UCEAP.
All right, in this session, we will be covering some examples of differences you may encounter abroad related to gender expression, things you should consider and things you should research as you select a program, as you prepare for your time abroad, and then also some things you should consider once you are abroad. And then we're also going to provide you with information on resources available to assist you before and during your program. On this slide, we've included the image of the gender unicorn. This is an image from transstudent.org that provides a visual representation of gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, and physical and emotional and attraction. Whether or not you've seen this specific image before, you may have had exposure to these terms and concepts and may have participated in conversations about gender as it relates to these ideas. What's important to think about as you consider your study abroad plans is that the country you end up studying in and the people you're interacting with may or may not have exposure to these terms or ideas before. They may use similar terms or even the same term, and it may have a different meaning, such as non-binary, gender fluid, genderqueer, transgender, and bigender. So these same words could mean different things in different contexts abroad. Keep in mind that California is very advanced on conversations about gender, and there may be parts of the world that won't have the same understanding of the terms that you use. Even if you view them as progressive countries, you may find some differences once you get there. As you start your preparation for study abroad, we just want you to keep in mind that there may be a period of adjustment once you're abroad, once you're on the ground, and you take the time to discover what the local dialogue is surrounding gender. I want to give you some concrete examples. This is all very kind of philosophical, but some concrete examples of things that you might encounter or things that kind of explain what I'm talking about here about global differences. So for the first example, in Denmark, gender X is a legal status. So Danish citizens have to go through a legal process in order to get that gender X marker on their passport. And that's a different process than the way US citizens get the gender X marker on their passport. So even though that term gender X is being used in both countries, people will have gone through very different journeys to get that marker on their passport. Julie is going to be talking more about the gender X passport later in this presentation, the US gender X passport. Second example, in Sweden, at some universities, you will find an option to select non-binary or prefer not to say on your application to the university. However, if you select that option, the university will contact you and ask you to select one of the traditional gender markers because they need one of those to issue you your social security number. You may ask, okay, well then why is it on the application if I can't use it? And that's a very valid question. And the reason is that some of the universities in Sweden and Finland are using the same software. And in Finland, you don't need to use one of the traditional markers for their purposes, but it's using the same software as Sweden. So this is an example of a time when you could come up against some administrative difference that is not only different from California, but it's different from one country to the next. And the final example is related to language, and in particular, the French language. This is just an example. So the following is a quote from a UCSB PhD student, Jordan Tudisco. In French, everything is gendered. Adjectives, articles, pronouns, nouns, and even some verb forms. Most of the time, the masculine form is considered to be the root of the word. So when it comes to adding a non-binary alternative, it is particularly hard. In other Romance languages, such as Spanish or Italian, both the masculine and feminine often have their own specific endings as an O or an A. So you can create a third ending for non-binary forms, and it's much more complicated in French. So in addition to the structure of the French language itself, the French are very, very proud of their language. It's a prominent part of their culture, and they are very vigilant about protecting it from change. So conversations about the gendering of language in France are going to be very different than you would experience in California. And you'll just want to have an open mind as you engage in these conversations with local French speakers. I'm now going to move on to some advice and things that you'll want to consider as you select your program and as you start doing your research. Some of these things you can research on your own, and some of them you will want to reach out to your study abroad advisors to help get more information. So let's start with housing and facilities. What are the housing options on this program? They're going to vary by program. Are they apartments? Are they student residences or dorms? Are there homestay options? And would you feel comfortable living in the options offered on the program? Are there gender inclusive housing options? Some programs will have a gender inclusive housing option, and is that something that you would be interested in? Are there single or shared rooms? If there are shared rooms, would you feel comfortable sharing with another student? Are there gender inclusive bathrooms at the host institution? And finally, are housing options assigned by gender or by sex on the passport? Some institutions, just for example, the American University in Cairo in Egypt, will require you to live in the student residence based on the sex on your passport. And that's just something you'll want to research as you're making your decision about the program you want to apply to. Things to consider with regards to paperwork and administration. Is there a third gender option on the university or institution application? If not, are you comfortable with moving forward with your application? Is there a third gender option on your immigration or visa paperwork? And immigration or visa paperwork tends to be much more structured and much less flexible than other types of applications. Again, would you feel comfortable moving forward with your application if there was not a third gender option, or if you were required to select a gender on your immigration paperwork that matches your sex on your passport? Does the university or institution offer an opportunity to provide a lived name? And do instructors and staff use preferred pronouns in the classroom and on program-related activities? Now, things you consider as you start locating resources. So is there a local LGBTQIA+ center or student group that you can connect with once you are on site? And is there any option to connect with those groups prior to departure? That could be something you could explore as well. The US State Department has travel advice on their website for the LGBTQIA+ community. They have a page called LGBTQI+ Travelers, which will give more general travel advice. And then each country page has a section under local laws and special circumstances that will have information on LGBTQIA travelers specific to that country. Does your study abroad provider have an intelligence resource that you can use? So for example, if you do study abroad through UCEAP, you will have access to WorldQ, which provides immediate access to critical threat intelligence tools and assistance. And you can use that to research your program, and also you can use it while you're on site. And lastly, Diversity Abroad is another great resource that you can use as you're doing your research. And I'm going to hand it over to Julie.
Thank you. The UC travel insurance program is a travel policy that is required. You will be automatically enrolled and the cost is included in your program fees. This travel policy will serve as your primary medical coverage while abroad if you have an accident or an illness. This travel coverage is not the same as health insurance provided by programs like UCShip. It does not include coverage for routine care or preventative care costs. If you need these services while abroad, we recommend you remain enrolled in the UCShip program. Depending upon the country you are studying in, different types of services may or may not be available based on host country laws. It is important to research any medical needs prior to confirming a program location. The same goes for any medication you are currently taking. Importing the medication, obtaining refills, or getting a new medication may or may not be possible. My department, International Health Safety and Crisis Management, can help you understand whether a program country can meet your needs. The QR code will take you to our website where you can view information about travel insurance and contact our office with questions.
In thinking about your identity while abroad, start by researching your new environment and host country. Be sure to check any assumptions you have about your new environment, as not everything we assume about a host country or city may be accurate. Once you have done your research, try to set goals for what you might want to get out of your experience. Think about how you'll engage with your new environment. Ask yourself questions such as, what kind of opportunities will I engage in while abroad? And how do I think about myself when I imagine myself in a new space? If you already came out or transitioned in California or your home environment, how would you feel if you have to, or if you want to, come out again in your new environment while abroad? Keep in mind, you won't have easy access to all of your support networks while abroad, such as resources that are available to you at your home UC campus, your family and friends, and your personal healthcare provider or therapist. Conversely, if you've never come out or transitioned before, is that something that you're considering or thinking about exploring while you're abroad? If this is something you're considering, be sure to think about why you haven't come out in California, and consider these factors when thinking about whether you want to come out while abroad. And remember, you won't have easy access to your support network while abroad. After you've researched what your new environment will be like, you may decide not to re-identify yourself while studying abroad. If you don't feel safe or comfortable with an aspect of your identity being public in your new environment, and you decide not to identify or re-identify yourself, consider how this decision will impact you, your interactions with others, your daily life, and other aspects of your study abroad experience. While you consider identifying yourself or re-identifying yourself while abroad, it's also helpful to think about having a support network. Do you have a support network at home, which might include friends, family, resources at your UC campus, or a counselor or therapist? If so, how will you replicate your support network while you're abroad? Ask your study abroad program provider what support options will be available to you while abroad. For example, students studying abroad through UCEAP have access to LYRA, which is a mental health service provider students can connect with in person, by video, or by phone. Knowing how to access the support resources available to you in advance can be helpful if you end up needing to use them at any time while abroad on your program. And I'll pass it over to Julie.
Thanks, Hannah. Gender X passports. If you have selected an X gender marker on your US passport, there are some important risks to consider. Whether a country will allow an X passport holder to enter, what types of safety and security concerns may be experienced, and what are the important questions to research. The QR code on this page will take you to the US State Department webpage, which discusses some of these questions to consider when selecting your gender marker. In 2021, the US government began allowing passport applicants to choose X as the answer to be displayed in the sex category. No medical or legal paperwork is required to choose X, and your other identity documents, such as a driver's license and birth certificate, do not need to say X to choose X for your passport. This passport is identical to traditional gender marker passports in every way, except it shows X instead of an M or an F under sex. This slide shows countries that have a third gender option. It is important to understand that there may be unique legal and medical qualifications for choosing a third gender option. Lauren had discussed some of those earlier. Not all countries have the same process as the US in issuing a third gender marker. Having an option is not indicative of gender affirming care medical options or societal acceptance of non-traditional genders. Additionally, other logistical challenges may occur when interacting with visa applications, airline and hotel booking systems, residency procedures, and more. Harassment and disenfranchisement while traveling internationally included being questioned or detained because of documentation that does not meet the expectations of border control authorities and security technologies is a real concern. While the process of changing documentation is uneven across geopolitical contexts, the introduction of the X marker has generally been celebrated as rectifying outdated understandings of gender as binary and as a victory for non-binary recognition. The US making available an X option without legal or medical documentation is a huge step forward, but we must understand the language used and what risks that may present to X passport holders. While launching the option, the US State Department directly tied X passport holders to LGBTQI+ individuals. Some countries with restrictive laws may view the X passport holder as a confirmation of an identity that is illegal in their country. In addition to researching your program country, it is important to research any country you plan to visit before you book any non-refundable travel. If a country has any laws criminalizing same-sex relations or non-traditional genders, an ex-passport holder may not be able to enter or may face extremely high risks to your safety and security. Travel with an ex-passport presents different kinds of risks, from logistical and administrative in dealing with booking travel and completing mandatory paperwork processes, to discrimination and harassment. It is important to be prepared for how you may navigate these risks. Many trans and non-binary individuals also experience high levels of anxiety and stress before, during, and after traveling. It is important to take care of your mental wellness in addition to your physical safety and security. As Hannah had mentioned, UCEAP provides all students with 20 sessions of virtual counseling, and there is travel insurance that provides coverage for mental health conditions, counseling, and medications. How can you research whether an X marker is acceptable for a particular country? How can you better prepare to travel with an X marker passport? Here at UCEAP, safety is a partnership. We are here to help you by providing resources and guidance to make the best decision for you. This slide can help you determine where to start. For specific information on these suggestions, please refer to your UCEAP portal or get in touch with the International Health Safety and Crisis Management Department, and we'd be happy to put you in the right direction.
Thank you, Julie. And we are ready to transition into our panel with G, who has joined us. And before we do that, really quickly, I had another student, B, who wanted to be here, but they had class. And so I asked if they could share a piece of advice about traveling or to anybody who's considering traveling, studying abroad, concern or wanting to think about how their gender identity will be received. They shared this quote. They said, for immersion programs, and that refers to direct exchange programs, finding genderqueer clubs, spaces, or events could make all the difference. I know it did for me. I definitely don't talk as openly as I do here about my gender identity, but I think that was mostly due to a cultural difference rather than a lack of acceptance in the area. In some ways, I felt a lot more free to express myself through fashion than I do here at UCSB. B has said, and oh, sorry, they studied at University of Edinburgh. B has said that if anybody is interested in connecting with them and asking questions, they're open to that. Their email is on this slide. And so if you want to take a little screenshot or take a picture of that, they said they'd be happy to talk to other students about their experience. So now I will move into our panel of one. G.
Hello.
Hi, G.
Hi. Sorry, I just got off of work. So, hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let me just get my questions ready. So can you please, oh, well, actually, sorry, first, G, can you just share where you studied abroad?
Yeah, I did the UCAP program summer 2022 in Florence, Italy. And then I also did the winter 2023 UCAP program in Paris, France, as a social justice and activism. So I was one of the in my last year at UC Riverside, I did UCAP Florence, and then I did UCDC in the fall, and then I went back to Europe for my last semester in college. So yeah, I have a lot of experience studying abroad. I'm super excited to be here. In between like each semester and like after, I actually traveled and during the weekends and stuff. So I have a lot of traveling experience. I went to 23 countries and 37 cities in a 12-month span. And so I'm also like a queer person, gender queer person. I'm also a drag queen as well, and identify as trans femme. And so I have a lot of experience and advice I can pass on to other young queer folk who are interested of like, oh, is study abroad, accessible to me? Is it an option? So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, G. So when you were planning to study abroad, was your gender identity a factor in your decision? And if so, how did you conduct your research about which program you were going to go on before you left?
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely. It was something that I definitely considered. I am somebody who is very fruity, as someone who is very out there. I also I think it's super important to remember like for me, like I was just talking to my coworker about it. Like I was so nervous. Like I was so nervous to go. And I was like, I didn't know if I wanted to. I was in oh sorry, I'm like next to an airport too. Um I was like I think one of the big things I was really scared about was because there's like I was during the pandemic and I was supposed to originally I applied to like a one in like London, but then like 2020 happened and I just thought maybe this wasn't the time for me. Like maybe this was a sign for me not to do it, right? And then I don't know, I just was like, fuck it. Like, I kind of like I'm kind of always been to the world like take it or leave it. You get what you get, you don't throw a fit. And for me, like I knew like and how I was telling, like I tell people like it wasn't that I needed to see the world, is the world needed to see me. And like for me, like I say that to myself because like I'm a queen, and I had the opportunity like beforehand to connect with people and I could share with people how I did so. And I I was very out there, like I connected with people like in the classroom, outside the classroom. But I was able to basically like beforehand, like I like went on social media and I like basically was like, oh, I basically looked up the LGBT community up in, thank you, girl. In France and in Italy, I was able to get connected to I'm an abolitionist and I'm a radical, and so like I got connected to a group of trans people who like had similar political beliefs as I did in Florence, and I basically helped run a protest when I was there during my time in Florence, and it was like my third week there, like it was crazy. I got like super connected. If you are a person who is of age, like I always I went to the nightlife. I was really involved in nightlife scenes because I'm also like again being a drag queen, like that was what I wanted to do. I was there to study and I was there to like meet other drag queens and other queer people around the globe. And like it was really cool. It was really, really cool. So hopefully that answers it. Um yeah. Um yeah, I could talk for hours. I'm so sorry.
No, no, no. I mean, that's why you're that's why you're here. So that was a little bit about kind of research you did, and some outreach. Once you were there, did you find that you expressed yourself differently in terms of your gender identity than you did at home? And was it kind of different from day one to day
Yeah.
100, or how did that go?
Yeah, so I feel like all of us as queer people, we know like we have to code switch, at times we have to like there's like times where we just know like for instance like I after I graduated college, I went back to my hometown, which is like a conservative part of like inner San Diego, right? East County San Diego. And like here I have to act a certain way and not the way I would have acted like in college in order for my own to protect my own safety, right? And so I thought a really interesting thing I had talked to I had brought up beforehand with somebody was that I'm already a loud gay person, And so now imagine being a loud gay American in Europe, right? Like everybody, fun fact, everybody hates Americans, right? In Europe, basically, we're like the laughing stock of the world, essentially. And you might have a different opinion. Some people might have different opinions, but that's what I was able to gather when I was there, is that no one took me seriously unless I started speaking Spanish to them, because then they wouldn't assume I was American, right? And so I just was always cautious about my positionality when I was like going into spaces. I will definitely say that like I was just talking to a coworker, like, and I mean this with all seriousness, like I definitely experienced violence when I was in Europe. I had been like, I was verbally assaulted one day. I was like catcalled. I experienced these things, but looking back at it, like those things, like they didn't really like those things were so minimal because I got to see the world, and like I tell people like don't be scared of these things happening, because you can still like your gender identity is something that you will always stay with you forever. And for me, like it was those experiences having to go through like this, like, there was times where I was scared, but like for me, like that's, I'm not gonna lie to you, like that's where I found like it was putting myself in those positions where I discovered more about myself. Right. And no, for real, they do happen here in the US. It's kind of wild. I know the other dolls get it. Like, there's times where I do not leave my house without my purse, and there's a little brick in my purse. Like if I know I have to walk a mile by myself somewhere, I'm gonna make sure I'm protecting myself, and like those things I encourage people to think of beforehand. Like if you're gonna be out and you're gonna explore the city, like Paris is a good example, right? Just being cautious about some of the places you're walking, and some of the places like being with somebody, be with a friend. God, feel free to tear up your food, by the way. I don't care. And so I'm with a friend, and I think I would really precious. But again, I really just want to emphasize: don't be scared. Like I definitely say, like I do have some privilege being a white passing person, right, or a white person, and I definitely think that like like I was able to use my privilege to help some of my like my other friends who are BIPOC, especially in Italy. Like Italy is a very like just the history of Italy, there is a lot of racism in Italy, and it's very like common like to see it happening in public, and these are things I wasn't prepared for, right? Because I was more worried about like my trans experience, but these are things I would take in consideration before going to places. But again, like asking yourself the questions of like am I going to let the I say like, are you gonna let these other people who are that perpetuate violence have the power? Or are you going to reclaim that power to be able to see the world? And I think that's super important, because I left Europe and I left these countries with a lot more than what I came there with. Things that I would have not ever been able to receive when I was here in the United States. So yeah, yeah. That's my answer. Long answer again. Sorry.
That's wonderful.
G, I just want to circle back to one thing that you said that I thought was absolutely brilliant. You said, don't be scared, be smart.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a great message. So let's just reiterate that again. Don't be scared, be smart.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, G. I'm actually going to finish because my next question was going to be, do you have any advice? But you've actually kind of sprinkled in really good advice throughout your answers. So what I'd actually like to do is ask if anybody who is here today would like to ask any questions for G. And I'm actually going to stop the recording now so that we can just kind of open it up.